Hello, awesome people. I hope you're having a great day today. Today, I'm looking at the 13th century epic poem called Sir Orfeo that was translated by J.R.R. Tolkien. My copy of this is in this book, J.R.R. Tolkien's Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, and then there are some other poems that he translated from that era that I've done. So I've never read any of these before, and so when I found out that he'd done a translation, I wanted to go ahead and knock these three epic poems out. Now this one's about 22 pages long. It's pretty short. It's in the fantasy genre. In fact, I would say it's a fairy tale. You know how Tolkien wrote on fairy stories where he talks about the value of fantasy and fairy stories for adults and how there's value in that. And I would think that this is probably something very similar, maybe something he was thinking of at the time, because it definitely feels more mature, grown up for adults than your typical fairy story would be. But this definitely has some fantasy elements to it that are pretty dark in nature. So it's pretty cool. I never heard of it before. I definitely was in. It has about a 3-page opening, and I knocked that out, as well as a 22-page in less than a half of an hour. So it's pretty quick and pretty gripping, and I definitely enjoyed it, and I was surprised by how much it was fun for me. I liked it probably more than Sir Gawain the Green Knight. It's got a lot of plot that happens in it. It's fast. It doesn't take much of your time. It's faster to read. It was faster to get into. If you recall, my review of Sir Gawain the Green Knight was that it took a while to really get into it. But I thought it was a lot of fun. So here, what I'm going to do for you right now is I'm going to read for you just to show you the first 10 lines of the poem to give you an idea of what's going on here. We are often read and written find as learned men do us remind that lays that now our harpers sing are wrought of many a marvelous thing. Some are of weal and some are of woe, and some do joy and some gladness know. In some are guile and treachery told, in some deeds that chanced of old. Some are tales of jests and ribaldry, and some are tales of fairy. And that's the first 10 lines. It's very fast to read. You can knock it through very quickly. Ultimately, you'll find out in the first line of this is that this is a story that's one of the most commonly told stories out there in songs and poems. It's a story of love between two people, and so that's what you're going to end up finding out very early on. And then you'll turn to the title character. Another key character in this was going to be his wife. So those are going to be our two kind of founding characters, although Sir Orfeo is going to be our main point of character, although it's told from third person in the poem standing, as you just sort of heard. It's not a first person view. But he's our key point of view character. There are going to be a lot of fun things that happen to him. He's going to grow a lot of changes are going to happen, and it has a lot of fun stuff that happens in it. I did recently a deep dive into George MacDonald, an earlier fantasy writer in the UK who wrote some stuff and he actually wrote a lot of fairy stories too, that are darker and for adults, that this feels very similar to. And so I thought maybe he had done some reading of this ahead of time. Now, there are 3 texts for this short story, according to the intro. That does a deep dive into it that exists. The oldest one is from 1370, and then there are a couple of older ones that are from later. They believe it's a lot older than that, and it's been translated. It has some words in it that were more modern, that they think are probably more recent additions, like England and Winchester, that they think were more recent additions to some of the texts that are out there. So several of those were used by Tolkien to create this translation. Of course, the interesting thing, is having a translation that still rhymes, still has meter, right, still flows, and so forth. It's obviously going to be a challenge. Luckily, the English language has a lot of rich, synonyms for words, right? So if the word was, that's being used as water, obviously you can rhyme water with anything that the word happens to use. So that's pretty rich. He also, for these 3 poems, uses a lot of words that are not that commonly used. For example, one of the words that he uses in this one is descry, to see something at the end of a line. So there's a glossary at the end by all of the archaic or Old English terms that he used in order to rhyme are pretty rarely used today. of all these three. And also there's also a letter that says where they're from and what line they're from, so you know where that word was used in these three poems. There's also an appendix at the end too. That's pretty cool. So there you are. So what am I going to give this? I loved it. I thought it was very well done. It was better than I thought it was, and I liked it better than Sir Gawain the Green Knight. So I'm giving this like an 8- because it gave Sir Gawain the Green Knight a 7.5. So this is more like a 7.7 or 7.8 than I'm rounding up to an 8. It was actually very strong, and I thought it was very, very nicely done. Sir Orfeo, and it was definitely darker. And this is actually fantasy, unlike Pearl, the previous short story poem that we did. I just finished. So not going to have one day, a lot of fun stuff. So anyway, I'm going to link you to this collection, so that way you can review it. But this stuff was published posthumously in 2021, so it was actually pretty recent. And so there's not a whole lot of stuff that you can do a deep dive into for you folks. And then it's not available. And then I'll also try to find you a different translation that is earlier and done. That's now on free, so that way you can read a different translation for free if you're not interested in purchasing a modern day thicker book like that one. So that way, if you're for budget purposes, if you just want to read a translation of Sir Orfeo, not Tolkien's, then that'll be free for you to try out and do. So I'll do that too. I'll try to find out for you too. As a reminder, it's not when they are written, but when they are published. For example, he edited and translated Beowulf in 24, but that wasn't published until decades later, right? So it's not when they are written, or in this case, translated, but when they're done. He realized near the end of his life that this process was probably going to be published posthumously, the Sir Gawain and Green Knight and these other things. So he went ahead and spent some of his last time doing the re-editing these that have been written earlier in his life in order to knock that out for you folks. So there you are. There's Sir Orfeo for you folks. Have you read it? If so, what do you think about it? Let's talk about it in the comments below. We can also talk about spoilers, because I only gave you the basic review that you would find out in the first 4 or 5 pages. So you want to talk about spoilers or the ending? Let's do it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, why not hit that subscribe button? There's going to be a lot more of these to follow. As a reminder, the title of this, The Worst Thing About New Books, is a quote by a French philosopher named Jacques Joubert, who said that the worst thing about new books was that they kept us from reading the old ones. And a book that's from the 1300s early, or potentially even earlier, in the 1200s, we just don't know, is definitely something that's an older sort of work, right? So this is definitely sort of a key for this channel. And then finally, I want to thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and investing it in watching my video. I hope you're having a great day today and this message finds you well. And thanks again for your time. It was very humbling.